this webinar, so I just wanted everyone to know that I've now set it to record. And the time it's going to take is about 45 minutes for us to get through the presentation. And with that, I would love to introduce our presenters to you. So first off, Suzanne Gaida. So she's worked for 27 years with the town of Cochrane. Starting out as a lifeguard, Suzanne worked her way up through the organization, finishing her career as the deputy CAO. Throughout her time with the town of Cochrane, Suzanne had the opportunity to work with and supervise areas of municipal government. She was instrumental in the development of many new programs and services to meet the needs of one of the fastest growing communities in Canada. Suzanne believes that looking for new, more efficient ways to get work done is vital in order to not fall behind in our ever-changing world. Suzanne has been working with BoxOfDocs as an industry advisor, and she is excited for this presentation. Ron Leaf, his most recent role was as the CAO for Clearwater County in Alberta. He retired in November 2017 after more than 30 years of municipal service. In addition to his experiences as CAO, Ron also served in senior administrative roles in areas such as recreation and community services, economic development, land use planning and development, and emergency management. Ron joined BoxOfDocs in February of 2019 as a product advisor, which has allowed him to pursue his interest in exploring ways for municipalities across North America to use technology to meet the ever-changing challenges and responsibilities facing local governments in the 21st century. Concerning today's discussion, Ron has an extensive background in emergency management and served from 2003 to 2008 as a municipal representative to the Central Alberta Health Region's Pandemic Planning Task Force. And before I forget, my name is Leslie Hastman and I'm with BoxOfDocs, and I'm going to be kind of your host in the background, helping things move along here. So for today's topics, we're going to be covering the COVID common municipal challenges. So it's been absolutely wonderful. Ron and Suzanne have connected with multiple communities in various provinces, specifically mostly in Western Canada, although we also did get some information from CAMA as well. We're going to be talking about collaborative technology, what it is, and the potential benefits to municipal governments. We're going to be talking about future opportunities for municipalities. At the very end, we're going to do a BoxOfDocs overview of who we are and what we're about. And then at the end as well, we're going to do a questions and a follow-up. So we're going to see how we're doing for time. I see Ashley has already mentioned in the chat box. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to put that in the chat box. And if there's time at the end, we'll look to see if we can address one or two. However, our commitment to you is that we are going to collect all of those questions and we are going to come up with the answers, and then we would circulate that back to you in a summary. So with that, I'm very excited. I wish I had a drum here to give a drum roll. Ron, you're up, and we'd love to hear from you.
All right, Leslie, and thank you for that introduction. Before I get started, what I want to do is, as Leslie mentioned, Suzanne and I were doing some research in preparation for today's webinar. And one of the things that came out through the discussions, particularly and in Saskatchewan and Alberta, was the issue of municipal amalgamation. Both provinces have had, there's been quite a bit of discussion over the last number of years. And one of the things I want to make really clear is that when Suzanne and I are talking about collaboration today, what we are discussing is the, sorry, I hadn't clicked on my video. What we're talking about is what we believe are the opportunities for administrative efficiencies. We recognize that amalgamation is really a political discussion at the local and at the provincial level. And so when we're using those terms, I want to make it really clear out of the gate that we're talking about ways in which municipal staff can work together. We're not in any way promoting amalgamations or taking a stance on amalgamation. That being said, let me start with a question. How many of you remember a time way back when we used to allow someone to blow all over a cake and then we would cut it up and eat it. The reason I share that, one, hopefully I've been able to get a smile or a giggle when you consider we're really talking about a birthday celebration. But what that question also points out is how quickly this pandemic response and how we've changed as a society in relation to something as simple as a traditional birthday celebration. But that same type of situation has played out at the municipal level as well. And so what I intend to do here over the next 10, 12 minutes is take you through kind of a, if you want to call it a journey, from what started in mid-March and the various challenges that municipalities found themselves out of the gate, and then kind of work through into today, and then also share with you some of the discussions and questions, excuse me, that we're starting to hear from municipal members and the discussions we're having with associations around what is in the future for 2020 and possibly forward into 2021. So let's roll back. Mid-March, the federal and provincial governments begin their lockdown procedures. And municipalities very quickly found themselves in the place where they were dealing with partial staff, in some cases 50% staff. That might have been an intentional strategy. Some municipalities were looking at mitigating the risk that was, and they kind of created shifts where individuals were working a week on, a week off, and then with the other members of their team working from home. Other individuals found themselves in that situation because they implemented safe work practices that if an individual in any way felt ill, fever, cough, those type of physical symptoms, they were instructed to stay home, quarantine for 14 days, and those individuals were still, in a lot of cases, capable of working. And so municipalities were now literally on the fly creating remote work from home procedures. They were having to expand their technical capabilities, whether that was internet. They were dealing with questions such as, do they allow staff to use home computers and then have to mitigate the potential security risks that came with that and possible loss of privacy versus having to purchase new computers and laptops and augment or create basically home offices for their staff that weren't in the municipal office. An example of that was there was one client that we were talking with that ended up needing to purchase 75 computers and tablets to be able to support their at-work procedures, or sorry, the at-home work. What was interesting about that was then as they were looking at that amount of equipment was they then exceeded their IT budget for 2020, which then had them going back to council. However, council had suspended their meetings because they wanted to get their e-council procedures in place, which then delayed the ability to purchase the equipment. And so there was this multiplication of procedures and policies that needed to be put in place very quickly that was complicating the ability to do work. As mentioned in the next bullet, the whole issue of how to host e-councils was also interesting to watch. While a lot of provincial legislation allowed for virtual meetings or electronic meetings, again, the technical requirements of how to have council in that, how to bring in so that there was the public attendance or the ability for the public to view what was going on, meet the requirements for open decision making and the transparency that was associated with that. And that was, in some cases, that process went on for 2 or 3 weeks, which again impacted on the efficiencies of municipal governments as they were trying to move forward on, if you want to call it, meeting some of their day-to-day requirements. Some of the other issues that municipalities struggled with were health and safety. Issues around things like disinfection, how to meet the physical distancing guidance criteria. Some municipalities implemented things such as they took their occupancy, and so if they were allowed 100 staff, their protocol was they would only allow a maximum of 50 individuals, whether that was public or staff. They would have meeting rooms, or that they would use large meeting rooms for basically one-on-one meetings to, again, look at dealing with that. As early as 2 weeks ago, as part of the relaunch strategy, we were hearing discussions around porta potties. And as municipalities were bringing porta potties into play for some of their outdoor recreation facilities, again, they were talking about disinfection protocols and what's the frequency that you clean a porta potty. Conversation I had with the CAO when I was asking about some of the challenges that they were having in this, or what were some of the biggest challenges. He said, and I'm going to pick on Public Works here, but he said, you know, getting across to my Public Works staff that their protocol was when you exited a vehicle, you disinfected that, that truck. And when you moved into, let's say, a skid steer, then they would disinfect that again. And when they went to exit the skid steer, they would disinfect. And he said, just getting across to my staff the importance of following those procedures to limit the chance of disinfection, he goes, is really frustrating for some of my staff because it's cutting into the productivity of what they're typically used to being able to accomplish in a day. And so just dealing with that education aspect was a challenge for their management as well as their health and safety officers. Dealing with the internal and external messaging for the staff, for the community, and even the elected officials. Again, the media was covering all sorts of different perspectives. The one that seemed to get a lot of traction was the we're overblowing COVID-19. This is really no different than the flu, and actually the flu kills far more people each year than what's currently happening with COVID. So again, dealing with those internal and external messages was something that that municipalities were having to monitor how their messages were being received, whether there were adjustments that needed to occur. Another aspect that was occurring was with regard to the senior and the vulnerable populations in their communities. While there was all sorts of communication coming out from the provincial health and the chief medical officer of health, we were hearing from municipalities that they were having individuals contacting the local community or the local municipal office, probably because the community was familiar with that and the community was looking for confirmation or information from their local elected officials and their municipal staff. And what we were hearing was staff were struggling with, do we put out our own messaging or do we just act as a referral and provide people access through websites or direct people just to get that information directly from the provincial government? So that was the initial work. Now, as we're starting to see the various relaunches across Canada, some of the policies that we're hearing, or again, some of the messaging, is that municipalities are struggling to be, quote, in compliance with the broad provincial directions or the federal directions and regulations, particularly when there's not a lot of clarity around that, or the messaging is changing. And I've heard from a number of individuals the whole issue around is it mandatory to wear masks? As we'll recall, early on in the pandemic, there was instruction from the medical officers of health federally and provincially that it wasn't necessary for people to wear masks in public. Now what individuals are being told is, yes, it is beneficial, and some jurisdictions are actually making it mandatory to wear masks in public facilities. And so just the uncertainty or the mixed messaging that's out there is again proving some challenges for municipalities. As municipalities are also looking at opening their offices up. Again, there's a number of discussion. I was talking with the head of an organization when he was saying, we're looking at moving back to a 75% complement in our office with 25% of people still working remotely. And what he shared with me was that a number of his staff are saying, I feel that I'm more effective working at home. I'm still concerned about the possibility of contracting COVID. I'm really not comfortable coming back to work. And so there's challenges now with how do you mandate the staff have to come back? Do you accommodate those concerns? How do you ensure that there continues to be a safe work environment? The productivity and the whole issue of client service as offices open up are again issues that municipalities are struggling and dealing with. Some of the discussions or questions that we're also now starting to hear are with regard to some of the financial aspects of what are going on with municipalities. Most municipalities that I've talked with have amended their municipal tax policy to some degree, whether that's in delaying the tax deadline for payment. In some cases, it's reducing or removing a penalty date or a couple of penalty dates. And the whole idea is for for the municipality to accommodate individuals that have been out of work, businesses that have seen significant declines in revenue, and the same thing goes with industry. However, what we're also hearing is that now people are taking a look and saying, well, we're in the busy time of the year. This is when we're going to be expending probably 70 to 80% of our municipal budget occurs in the spring and summer months. And we are now concerned whether we're going to see enough tax revenue coming in to meet our 2020 budgetary obligations without incurring deficits. Heard of one municipality in Western Canada that's heard from industry, that industry has been two major industrial ratepayers have seen significant declines in their revenue streams, and they've put the municipality on notice that they're not sure that they're going to be able to pay their entire municipal levy. And that's created some significant challenges for not only 2020, but also 2021. Speaking of 2021 and the financial implications, there's also starting to be questions asked, and these questions are being posed to the associations, provincial associations, around what have the associations heard, if anything, from the provincial or federal governments about the deficits that they're incurring here associated with the COVID response. And are there going to be decreases in future grant funding to municipalities? What's that going to impact on the 2021 operational and capital budgets? There's also concerns around reductions in provincial programs and services and impact on municipal residents and businesses. Again, for municipal staff from Alberta, they're quite aware. In Saskatchewan, you might be aware. I was talking with a counselor recently, and he was discussing the disagreement or the dispute that's going on right now between the Alberta government and the Alberta Medical Association around doctors' fees. And this counselor expressed the concern that they are going to see an exodus of some of the doctors in their community. And while not a municipal role formally, he is concerned that they are going to be faced with having to be far more proactive in doctor recruitment than they've been in the past, which is going to, again, place additional stress on budgets and on municipal staff time and goals as they respond to an issue that's really more appropriately a provincial responsibility. So again, just some of the issues coming out of how municipalities have responded, and some of the questions that now are in relation to the financial relationships between the province, the federal government, and municipalities. Now, I'm expecting a number of you are saying, okay, thanks, Ron, you've told me something that I don't know, or tell me something I don't know. We've experienced all of that. That's not what I signed up was, just to have you give me this shopping list of stuff we're already dealing with. What I would ask you that you consider is, there are more than 3,500 municipalities in Canada that have wrestled with these issues, are still wrestling with issues or similar challenges. And when you take a look at the similarities in the issues that I've talked about, and you consider the duplication or more of staff of like municipalities, whether that's cross Canada or whether that's just within the provinces or even within regions, there is a huge amount of duplication that's coming up in terms of creating the same policies and procedures. As most of you as members of BoxOfDocs recognize, a lot of municipalities share their policies and procedures, and that's where we have come up with a lot of the documents that you're able to pull from our database. What we're taking a look at is suggesting that people take a look at collaborative technology, and I'll talk about that here very quickly, as one of the ways that municipalities can now start proactively developing policies and procedures, as opposed to waiting until a municipality actually posts something on BoxOfDocs or shares it with its members. Is certain, despite what anyone might be saying, we are still early on in the COVID response. If you listen to the general consensus of the epidemiologists, we're still going to be dealing with COVID-19 for at least another 20, 24 months, if not longer than that, depending on the effectiveness of the vaccine that they come up with. What we're seeing, this is creating a whole bunch of uncertainty, and what we're seeing now as a result of that is, yes, there's a whole bunch of stress that goes with that uncertainty, but there's also an openness to looking at doing things differently. This openness exists at both the municipal level as well as the provincial level, and part of that is, how do you use, is there some ways that we can use new technologies to increase or improve our operations? And we're going to, and what BoxOfDocs is suggesting is that you take a look at collaborative technologies as a way of assessing and improving the way you adopt new policies. If you want to know what collaborative technology, there's a whole bunch of different definitions I stole from Wikipedia. I'm not going to read it to you, but the one thing that I want to highlight is, in addition to it facilitating people, the technologies that facilitate people work on common tasks simultaneously, the other key part of this is that there is an intentional group process that accompanies the use of that software. And so whether you're talking about Zoom or Slack, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, Office 365, etc., all of them require you to look at using that technology in a very particular way. And I'm going to share with you some of the things that BoxOfDocs has done. As Leslie said at the outset, I spent 30 years working in municipal government, and in February of 2019 was able to start working with BoxOfDocs. And as I became exposed to the BoxOfDocs world, and right now, just to give you some context, we have, our staff are located in Edmonton. I live in Rocky Mountain House. Suzanne lives in Cochrane, as does one of our other staff members. We have people in Calgary, and we have a number of associates that are working out of Berkeley, California. So we are not in the same physical place, and a number of my team I have not ever met face to face. We have only met virtually. And so I'm going to use some of the learnings that I've derived through my time in the BoxOfDocs startup world. I don't want to suggest that we've got it down pat. We continue to struggle, I think, as every organization does. But here are some of the things that I would suggest that you need to consider if you're looking at collaborative technology. The first one is that you need to meet virtually, face to face. Whether as we're doing here in Zoom, there is something about being able to look at an individual, and even though you're looking at a postage stamp, you can still see the gestures, you can see body language that you don't get just with audio. And so it's important to meet face to face. It's also important for BoxOfDocs uses that. Sorry, I just had something pop up on my screen that distracted me. We have a standing procedure every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We meet for 15 to 30 minutes for huddles, and that gives us an opportunity to, again, meet face to face, to share, here are the challenges, here are the requirements that we have from our various teammates, and it gives us an opportunity to just 45 minutes out of every week is spent looking at each other on Zoom. You need to have some type of collaborative platform, and we use Slack. Microsoft Teams, if you're familiar with that, is another one. But what this allows you to do is create a number of channels, specific topic areas that you can pose questions. You can talk with team members directly. And what I've found is, in some ways, Slack is more effective than when I worked in a face-to-face office. What I can do is I can throw a question out, and an individual can get to that when it fits into their time period, time schedule. It's a priority within BoxOfDocs to respond to our teammates as quickly as possible. And typically the longest I'll wait is maybe 2-3 hours. But I was in a meeting yesterday and got a Slack message from our founder, Derek, and was able to respond to that in about 30 seconds and provide him the information while still staying present in the other meeting. Another thing that you need to do is take a look at using some type of project tracking tools, and whether you're using a formal project management software or something just as simple as a Excel spreadsheet that is on a shared drive, you need to have something a scorecard that everybody understands where you are as an entire team. Google Docs and Office 365 have all been now designed and programmed to facilitate collaboration and the kids coming out of schools have been now working with Google Docs for probably close to 10 years. They come into our environments expecting to be able to do collaborative work. Just a couple of final things that I'm going to share with you. It's important to use emojis. It's always amazed me that if people have the opportunity to read something and interpret it negatively, that will happen. Emojis really allow you the opportunity to set the context for how that text should be interpreted. I've taken a lot of these points from a Forbes article. You'll be getting a copy of this PowerPoint as part of the follow-up. And if you want, feel free to click on that icon and that'll take you to that Forbes article to give you some final or more detail. Very quickly to finalize, here's some other ways that BoxOfDocs is using its software to improve your collaboration, particularly with law firms. In May, as people started looking at the relaunch, we started taking a look. We were talking with law firms and we were looking at the information bulletins that they were putting onto their websites. And it became clear that all of the material that was out there was valuable to in varying degrees. But there is no way that municipalities with the workload that they had would be able to go and check out 5, 6, or 8 different municipal legal firms' websites to find what they were looking for. So what we've done is we've now pulled that in. That's in a resource area. And if you were to go on, you can take a look, and those under our COVID, if you were to put in, for example, COVID and employment law, you would be directed to one of the articles that Brumley LLP has put out. There's also links to changes in provincial legislation and regulations. There was a ministerial order that came out from Municipal Affairs a couple weeks ago that was highlighted, and the significance of that was highlighted by Reynolds Mirth, Richards and Farmer. Again, that is available now through our database. What our goal was through this process was to improve the access to legal information, so that you can get multiple sources, and that can save you time and contribute to better decisions in program development. I'll leave you with one final note, and that is, when you're considering developing a collaborative work environment, that is not taking your existing work environment and adding in Zoom. I'll go back to that definition where it talked about intentional work processes, and you need to be intentional on how you want to use the software, and what are some of the adaptations and some of the rules that you expect of your staff as they look to use that. Thank you very much for your time, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne.
Thanks, Ron. Good morning, everyone. I'm not going to take a lot of time. I get the opportunity to talk about what the opportunities are. So, you know, we've talked about all the things that happened and what COVID brought to us from our common learnings, and you know, you all know what that was. And I just want to say from my perspective, and most of the people I've talked to, you've all done a really great job. Municipalities responded very quickly to protect their staff and their community. There were kinks, of course there always will be, but certainly the last 3 months have been full of learnings and response that you've all done very well. So congratulations on that. One of the things that COVID has done for us, if you turn the negative and look at the opportunities, is really looking at how we change our work. So I was reading an article, Todd Hirsch, chief economist for ATB, and he referred to post-COVID as the fourth industrial revolution. So we have an opportunity with COVID to embrace the cyber revolution. And it's been going on for a while, but it's been slow, and certainly COVID has kickstarted that for us. And as municipalities, we have an opportunity to look at how we do our work and how we embrace this new revolution. No doubt about it, we've been forced to work differently. But where do we go from here? And that's the question. We have to create new policy, but we also have an opportunity to take what's happened and where we've gone with this, continue to learn, and to actually grow and create new opportunities in how we move forward. And we believe, and I believe, that collaborative technology is one step towards that. So we've talked about what collaborative technology is, but what are the benefits of collaborative technology for a municipality or for any organization? I think that one of the big things that we all are faced with, and we've been faced with it for years, but certainly COVID has brought it forward, is the financial side of it. And Ron talked about the finances and what's happening at the provincial and federal level, and ultimately is happening at your municipal levels with deficits that we can't actually operate with. So how are we going to look at into the future budgeting and saving funding? And I think collaborative technology is one of those solutions. I think it'll create efficiencies, and with efficiencies come savings. If you have, I've talked to a number of staff, both in Cochrane as well as in the region, that have made the comment of, I get so much more done at home. I get so much more done when I have the space to do it. And so if we're creating more efficient staff who have had to actually create new processes, virtual processes that are creating efficiencies, we may not need to continue to add as staff so quickly, right? If we have a way to create efficiencies for staff to create process efficiencies as well as to get more work done, then it's ultimately going to save money in the long run for our municipalities, as well as the opportunity to look at saving space. So many of you know that as staff comes on, space crunches happen, and with COVID moving forward and the social distancing that's going to be required, even in our workplaces, how are we going to accommodate not only our current staff, but future staff? And so when we look at collaborative technology and opening up the ability to have people work in different spaces, but work collaboratively through technology, it gives us the opportunity to say, do we need to have more space right away? I was reading a long-term plan from a Northern Alberta community for space that was talking about $80 million in the next 20 years in future space requirements for their staff. That's big. And we all know that that's the least popular item for a council to stand behind and for a community to stand behind is more office space for staff. So there's an opportunity to look at how we can save money by using collaborative technology. As well, it opens up your access to talent. I was talking to a CAO from rural Alberta, and rural Saskatchewan's probably the same, and they struggle to get qualified CFOs, chief financial officers, or planners. And if they do get them, they may be young and they stay for a couple of years and then they leave. So with collaborative technology, it opens up the opportunity to access a bigger talent pool. That's from a work perspective. From our own growth perspective and network perspective, as leaders of municipal government, we can grow our virtual network. No longer are we going to depend on our region or even our province. With collaborative technology, we can open it up not only to other provinces and nationally, but internationally, to the US, to Europe. We're all serving municipal governments, and while things are different and laws are different, there's a lot of opportunity for us to work together as we move forward and create a network that's quite large. This ultimately is the opportunity to do things differently. In order to do that, though, I believe that we need to change our leadership. So how we lead our staff is going to have to ultimately change. We're going to have to really breed a culture of trust. So when you have people working remotely, it's not positive. It's not going to work if you try to micromanage. You have to develop the trust. You have to really give autonomy to your staff and to people to actually do their work. One of the things that I read and I've talked about is focusing on the destination, not on the journey. Don't focus on the input, focus on the output. So it's really creating that real clear vision of what work needs to get done, setting the priorities, and allowing the staff to do it in their own space, their own time, in their own way. Of course, we all know it's not going to work for everybody, and that's probably one of going to be the biggest challenges of this opportunity is determining which roles can actually work remotely, and how does collaborative technology work to ensure that the people who are in the office and the people who are working remotely are still connected. And I think as leaders, we need to do a real focus and an intentional focus on building teams and in this kind of an environment, and really looking at ways to bring that team together. Ron spoke to some of the ways BoxOfDocs does it. He didn't talk about the box of beers that we do every Friday after work, but those types of things to build team. And I think that is a big piece of it. I think that together as a sector, we need to work to find collaborative tech that is secure. So for those of you that might be on that are IT professionals, this may be causing you to cringe a little bit, but it needs to be secure. It needs to meet all of our cybersecurity requirements and privacy laws. But I think it's out there. It also needs to be affordable, and it needs to be easy for staff to use. And I think together as a sector, we can start looking at opportunities to do that together. So change is never easy. As I said, we have an opportunity to make impactful change in how we do our work in the future. We've got the tools are there. We need to find the ones that work for us and embrace collaborative technology for what it's intended to be. So you all have a choice, we all have a choice. Do you go back to how you always did it as we come out of this COVID pandemic and we get back to doing our work? Do you go back to how you've always done it? Or do you add Zoom, as Ron mentioned, or Teams to your toolbox and continue to do it as you did it, but with one new piece? Or do you actually take it, lead the municipal world and embrace collaborative technology as we move forward and change the way we do our work? It's really up to you. And I'm going to leave it with that and hand it back to Leslie.
Hi, thanks Suzanne and Ron. We really appreciate you both sharing your thoughts. Now what I would like to do is just talk a little bit about BoxOfDocs in case you've never heard of us. And I know there's folks on the call that are active users, so we really appreciate you joining in today. So here at BoxOfDocs, we want to help empower local governments with a smarter, faster way to do research. We were created for local governments by local governments, and BoxOfDocs search allows you to find the documents you need in seconds. And so right here on the screen, you're going to see on the right-hand side, that's a picture of our easy to search portal, which curates your search results better than any other public search engine out there, without any ads or irrelevant content. And the best news of all, we've just made a company decision recently, and BoxOfDocs search is absolutely free for local government employees. So if you have a municipality email address and you work for a municipality, you are completely open and free to use BoxOfDocs search. And just a little bit more about this. So we have over 400,000 municipal documents in our platform. We just recently went through, so for those of you who may have checked out our website in the past, we just launched a brand new website and a subsequent platform change with some upgraded colors, some new messaging. We're also going to have webinars such as this one posted on there for you to view. And I also just wanted to touch on the fact that we work very closely with different associations. So I know on the call that we have some folks from the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities. We really enjoy working with them. We have partnerships with the Canadian Associations of Municipal Administrators as well as the rural Alberta municipalities, and it's been fantastic. Also working with the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association. So if any of you may have received emails in recent days or weeks, that might be because of our relationships with these associations. If you want to just flip to the next screen here, Suzanne. So on this last slide here, I just kind of wanted to show that, as you'll see on our website now, on the left-hand side, that's kind of promoting our free to use, our search. It's very easy to get started. You just go onto our website, you log in for free. There's absolutely, like I said, no charge for that. And then we've recently launched a new offering, and it's called Gov Plus. And it's a concierge search and share. So what's really, really cool about this is this particular offering is we're doing non-published documents. So when you need more than just the public documents that are offered on our regular search, this is the first secure government document sharing repository of its kind. And it's really what true collaboration looks like for connected communities. And so when you upgrade to this, you'll get, as I mentioned, our exclusive concierge search service. So when you can't find a document, we will help you find that. And so with that, this will conclude our webinar, and it's on time, which is fantastic. And so as you'll see kind of on the right-hand side, that's our website, that's our phone number, our info, and I believe Ashley posted in our chat box as well. My name is Leslie. Ashley as well is on our sales and marketing team, and we'd be happy to help you or share anything else with you. If any of you would like to forward this presentation to anyone that you think might be of interest, as I mentioned, we're going to have that available shortly on our website for you all to access. And with that, I hope you all have a fantastic day. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.